Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This evening I'm going to be doing another movie review for you all. This movie is a horror film from the USA, English language, released in the year 2023, directed by Alan Scott Neal, and this film is called Last Straw. So Last Straw is about a young woman who is the manager of a diner that her father owns. Now one day her father tells her that she is on the night shift. She's very angry about this because she had plans for the evening, but she's going to have to put them on hold. So reluctantly she goes to the diner. She's not getting many customers, and so the evening is going very slowly, but pretty soon her evening goes from boredom to terror when an outside influence is trying to get inside and harm her for reasons that she doesn't know. So the night goes into a bloody fight for survival, and whether or not she lives to tell the tale is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Last Straw. This is a film that not many people talk about, and so I didn't really know what to expect, but the reason why I was intrigued by this film is because when I saw the trailer I realised that it was a one setting sort of horror film. This is a setting inside a diner. Now movies of a similar nature, such as Splinter, which takes place in a gas station, was one of my favourite horror films of all time, because not only is that a horror film on a visual sense, but it's also a horror film on a psychological sense, because that one setting of the gas station had a lot of threat to it. It was almost like it was its own little universe, and as the outside danger started to become more and more intense, it was engulfing the whole area that this woman had for safety. And so coming into this movie, I thought this is a similar type of feeling that this film had. Although it's not a science fiction creature feature film, I still thought, as alright, that one setting, I was hoping that it would deliver something of a similar nature. And after watching Last Straw, I will say that although this movie does have sporadic moments that are very good, ultimately this is a very big disappointment, because there is one glaring problem that is unfortunately the curse for a lot of horror films out there of a similar nature, and that's something I'll go into a little bit later. But what I liked about Last Straw is that it is very competently made, and the one setting of this diner I thought had that claustrophobic psychology to it. So you didn't know what was outside for the first half of the film. It was all very dark, and so that creates a lot of suspense. It allows you to create that monster inside your head, and when you have no safety net, you have a sense of vulnerability that is ever present from the start of the movie up until the halfway point. And I thought the first half of this film was really well done, and it had me very unnerved. And so the cinematography, it was excellent. It was in the middle of nowhere, this diner, and so this woman is by herself, and the outside elements are slowly starting to engulf on her. And this is where I had that same feeling of Splinter, that there was no help around and that she's going to have to fend off this enemy by herself. But exactly what that enemy was in this film, you weren't quite sure. And so I thought that worked really well. I thought the acting and the character development, although it wasn't great, I've certainly seen a lot worse, and so it does have a setup that I thought was actually fairly interesting. And at the halfway point there is a little bit of a twist. Now that twist does work as a negative, but it also works as a positive, because it gives the movie that sense of tragedy. This is a film where the situation just got well out of hand, and that if it went down a different path it could have been completely avoided. And so that sense of tragedy makes you feel sorry for the whole situation, and that's something very rare in a horror film, where you feel sorry for the situation, not only the characters, but the whole, the story and the events of this film taken down a different path, and these misunderstandings avoided, none of this bloodshed would ever have happened. And so I thought that was actually quite interesting. It was very different, and so that's something that I liked also. And I thought as though the horror set pieces were effectively done in some instances, and so that was good. But unfortunately the biggest negative to this film is that it reveals itself way too early. Once it reveals itself, all that pressure is off. That suspense of not knowing what's on the outside is gone. You have no longer created that monster inside your head. Your imagination is gone, and everything is written on the wall. And so when everything's written down, that sense of vulnerability has become completely taken out, and you know exactly where this film's going to go. And so that was ultimately the biggest problem to this movie, and that's a problem that a lot of other films have, is that people need closure. People need to know what's going on, but if you give the viewer a sense of control, then it does take away suspense, and you want to feel vulnerable in a horror film. And so the first half of this movie worked really well in that sense. But unfortunately at the halfway point, when everything's revealed, yes, it gives the film a certain sense of tragedy, but unfortunately it does release the pressure valve as far as suspense is concerned. So I definitely feel as though it shot itself in the foot. It should have been a lot better than it was. Up until the last quarter at least, this movie could have held that tension and really had me on the edge of my seat. But once I knew what was going on, I thought the movie does take a different approach, and as I said, it is unique in that sense, but unfortunately creativity doesn't always work in its favour. And so giving that audience audience a hand to hold on to and really navigate through these horrible situations, I thought really does play to its disadvantage. The movie does have very generic qualities to it once you know what's going on, and so that was very unfortunate. But it is a creative style of horror film. As I said, it has a certain sense of tragedy where you not only feel sorry for the characters but the whole situation in general. It was good to see Jeremy Sisto in a film. He plays this woman's father. It's a cameo role, but I'm a fan of Jeremy Sisto, so I haven't seen him in a very long time, so it was always good to see a long lost face out there in a horror film. And at the end of the movie, I just thought I was kind of checking out. I lost interest to some degree, and it was a movie that I thought as though it had a lot of potential, but it just didn't realise that potential fully. So overall, it's not a bad horror film, but unfortunately the first half is a lot better than the conclusion, and as a result of that, I'm only going to give this film 2.5 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching movies, and I'll see you later. Bye.